Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome along to the new look WTF1 podcast with myself, Harry Benjamin, and racing driver Callan O'Keeffe. We are subjecting you to two new faces. Sorry about that, but we thought we'd better introduce ourselves properly before we delve into all things Monaco. Hi, I'm Harry. You may have heard my voice before, maybe. Don't want to be big-headed or anything. I do commentary for Formula 3, Porsche Supercar, occasionally do BBC F1's coverage as well. And Callan, what do you do?
Well, I'm Callan O'Keeffe. I'm a racing driver. I've had the privilege in my career of racing at, the best circuits in the world: Silverstone, Monaco, Monza, all the Spa, the greats, and had some great results. And now I run a driver development company called School Ascend, and thankfully I get to do this podcast with you. And I'm just glad we've made it so far without having to show our faces, because I've definitely got a face for radio.
I don't know if people would agree with that. Well, look, we thought we'd do, before we get properly into it, a favourite F1 memory, an all-time F1 moment for you, Callan. What is it?
Yeah, I think, obviously the last podcast we did our sort of first F1 memory, and that was really nice, wasn't it? To sort of go back to where we fell in love with the sport. And I think my favourite race moving on from that was Brazil 2008. I know it's like a cliche fan favourite, but what a race that was. The emotion, seeing how much Formula One meant to all these teams, the drivers, the people around. I was 12 years old at the time. And just seeing how much the sport meant to the people to go and win a championship, when obviously Massa thought he had won it. It was taken away from him. He was the world champion for 14 seconds or something ridiculous. That for me was a huge moment in realizing how much I loved the sport. And since then, I've just been a fan. And obviously, from that moment on, I worked out that I wanted to be a Formula One driver and set my life to try and achieve it.
That's a nice memory, isn't it? You didn't achieve it though. But
I didn't. No, I didn't.
But you were a part of the Red Bull team though, so you can claim that. You can at least.
Yeah. I mean, as far as lives go, I'm pretty lucky. Like I said, I've raced around a lot of great tracks, and it's led me to be here with you, and that is the ultimate reward.
It is.
Who needs a Formula One World Championship? Who needs to be friends with Lando Norris and racing against all of them?
Yeah.
We'll see what that comes in handy later.
Yeah, lovely segue. Exactly. My favourite F1 memory, and actually one we were discussing this off air. The first thing that comes to my mind is also Brazil, but it's 2012, and I mean 2012 was my favourite all-time season. Anyway, in Formula One, in recent history, well, over a decade ago now. But it is 2012 coming into it. Sebastian Vettel in the Red Bull. There was only a few points between him and Alonso going for the World Championship. And then Vettel gets spun around by Bruno Senna. And on the first lap, he gets collided into. Somehow the car manages to survive. And then he has to make his way up through the pack, right to the very end. There's rain coming down in the closing stages as well. He nicks it. Vettel obviously gets the championship, and then one of the all-time emotional scenes, I think, is just seeing Fernando Alonso in his Ferrari overalls in Parc Fermé afterwards, just staring into the distance, and the camera just zooming in on his eyes while the other drivers come and sort of pat him down, saying "hard luck, mate." Honestly, that just evokes so much emotion. Loved it. Loved every minute.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's been so many good races, hasn't there? I mean, there's always a lot of talk in Formula One and about how sometimes the races aren't quite as exciting, but I think there's been some absolutely amazing moments, hasn't there? And what a great sport, and still many more to come, hopefully, in the future.
Absolutely. Well, that's us. We'd love to hear from you about your favourite F1 memories, what you want out of this show as well, and your general F1 takes. Always interesting to hear them. But for now, on with the show.
The WTF1 Post-Race Podcast.
Okay, the WTF1 post-race podcast, post-Monaco, round 6, I think it is now, done and dusted. Expectations were low for Monaco. Really qualifying is the only high around the streets of the municipality. But even before the rain came down, the race wasn't terrible. We're going to dive into everything. Now, normally, Callan and I are joined by a special guest every week, normally from the racing world. And it was supposed to be the Nissan Formula E driver, the Frenchman, Sacha Fenestraz. But he bailed on me. He bailed on us. And you know what? This was his reason why.
The little issue, no, I cannot, because Lando just invited me, and tomorrow we have a thing all day from 9:30 or 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. So I won't be able to be for that. I'm so sorry, man.
Honestly, a thing with
Me,
Lando.
mate, me too. Like Lando invited me to it, and I'm still here. Okay, Sasha, it's not good enough. I think, we know that there's a big party on the Sunday after Monaco. He's anticipating that hangover. He knows the last thing he wants to do is get up and do a podcast with us two idiots.
Yeah.
So he's especially hangover. That's the worst punishment any person could ever have. So, Sasha, 10 out of 10 for forward thinking and looking after yourself in the future, but. We need a better reason next time. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, we'll let you have this one. It was really specific though. That hangover is only going to last from 9:30 till 6 p.m. So, and clearly you're with Lando Norris. You've got other priorities in life. That's fine. We are going to get him on the show though. He is going to come on there. But Sasha Fenestrad's sadly not joining us. So we will plow on anyway because there is still a fair bit to talk about, even if it was Monaco. The rain came down. We had chaos, bizarre tyre strategies, some drivers literally playing bumper cars. However, at the end of it all, the order didn't really change too much. But I'm actually not too bothered by that, Callan. I mean, I'm surprised, but that was half decent for Monaco.
I mean, like Monaco does, okay, when it's a completely dry race and everything can get a bit processional, but there does always tend to be a little bit of drama because it is a place where drivers make a lot of mistakes and the walls are there to bite you at every opportunity. We also see the sort of human nature of frustration kicking in when you're sat behind another driver for 30, 40 laps and there's nothing you can do, even though you've got more pace. You got to try something. And we even saw it with Carlos Sainz on Ocon in the early stage of the race where he went into the Nouvelle chicane and Esteban apparently moved late under braking. Classic racing driver excuse. We love it. But yeah, it's a much more interesting challenge than a conventional race because although there's not the action and the like obvious stuff going on, drivers are managing different pressures, different problems that they don't necessarily have to worry about at races like Monza where passing is a bit more easy.
Now, one of the biggest, though, WTF moments was when the rain started to come down. Lots of cars making the call to go to the intermediate tyre. The difficult thing was, though, that the rain was only coming down in a certain part of the track, really through the hairpin and Portier and that section of the track, but it was getting heavier and heavier. Fernando Alonso, in second in the Aston Martin, comes into the pits, and we're all thinking, Inters, oh my God, this could be it for Aston Martin and Alonso. They actually could get a win on the board here. What does he do? He goes onto the medium tyre. What on earth were they thinking?
I kind of can understand why they did it. If you look at Fernando's track positioning, he basically had a free pit stop. And if he came out and the track did dry up when everyone else boxed for Inters, he would have made up net more time. Like that's what strategists are working towards. Strategists they're not necessarily fighting other cars. They have to cover other cars that are around them, but they're fighting for getting from point A to point B as quickly as they can with minimal time loss, because that's how you win the race if you do it faster than everyone else. So I think it was a bold gamble, but it was definitely a gamble. That was, hindsight's a lovely thing, isn't it? I would hate to be a strategist in Formula One because they have lovely weather radars, but we all know they're not exactly accurate. And no one can predict the future as far as I'm aware. But how good would it have been if the rain had stopped, everyone had come in for Inters, and there's just Fernando Alonso cruising away to a 45, 50-second lead, driving into the sunset, winning the Monaco Grand Prix. Maybe in an alternate universe somewhere, but unfortunately not on this podcast. Max Verstappen domination continues.
It really did, but it wasn't as straightforward as it might have seemed because of that. But I really think Aston threw away a win there. But what I found interesting, though, was afterwards, after the race. Obviously, P2 was a great result for Aston Martin and Alonso. Once again, it's one step higher on the podium than so far they've got this year with the thirds. But Alonso was being asked left, right, and centre about that tyre strategy call and being very sort of, I don't know if he was being coy about it or generally, not really knowing if it was the right call or not. There was no blame being mentioned on himself or the team. Even the celebrations were a little bit muted for second place in Monaco.
Yeah, I mean, if we had seen an Aston Martin on the podium in Monaco, you would have thought there would have been this, especially if someone would have said that to them before the start of the season. You're going to be on the podium comfortably with Fernando, fighting for pole position. They'd have ripped someone's arm off for that. But what we saw in the garage was actually great job. We got to put let's go have a watch. Oh, another one. It's so difficult. When are we going to win our race? And I think it's really interesting to see how Aston Martin, their expectations have changed and they've become elevated. Despite, they've had great results at the start of the season. Alonso's doing an amazing job. Had pole position if not for the best last sector we've ever seen at Monaco in a qualifying lap. I'd say I'll put it out there that was exceptional. And it's really interesting, as you say. Normally, we would hear Fernando probably being quite vocal with the team if there was something he was unhappy with, but he's really grown into this role as sort of team leader, hasn't he? And if he is unhappy about the call, he's not showing it. And even, obviously if it cost him a win, he's still keeping the positives, and maybe it shows that there's more potential for Aston there to challenge for wins later on in the season.
Yeah, he was really feeling really bullish, wasn't he, coming into the weekend, saying this and maybe at tracks like Singapore as well, where they are tighter, twistier street tracks. The level of competitiveness is kind of minimized amongst the field, really. There's less distance to travel. There's no long straights where Red Bull can show their advantage. Alonso thought he could have got the win there, and it was there for the taking at least, and there was the chance, but it didn't happen.
And doesn't that really show how in tune he is with modern Formula One? I mean, we always hear a lot of noise, don't we, about drivers coming in or teams coming in, and it's either underplaying or overplaying. And how many times do we have a driver going into Monaco going, this is my chance to win and I'm going to lay it all on the table, and then they finish 7th? Like, you talk about like backing yourself, backing your team, understanding the sport and the teams that you're competing against around you. Fernando's really at the top of his game, and I don't think he's maxed out yet. I think there's still more to come.
I can't wait till he's 60 years old and still on the grid.
Off the Zimmer frame, into the car, away we go.
Yeah, exactly. But it was great to see Alonso up there anyway. I'll tell you who it was great to see up there, though. Esteban Ocon and that Alpine. I mean, after don't you dare. That was so I mean, I love Esti, but that was a bit cringe, wasn't it? Oh, it was just a bit, come on, Esteban. Sure. But I'm not going to take the podium away from him because he was bloody fantastic. That pace in qualifying was amazing. He was on provisional pole at one point, and normally in Monaco, there's very easily a late red flag at the end of Q3, and that could have been it, and it could have been Ocon on pole, maybe on course for a second career win. In the end, it was a 3rd career podium, but he had to really fight for it.
Yeah, he did, but I'd also say from the other side, he looked quite comfortable fighting cars that we know traditionally are faster. And Monaco is one of those great places where the driver can make the difference. How close you get to the walls and how much you're willing to risk, especially early on in the weekend when the track's not there. It lays down the marker for how much you can develop yourself and the car over the course of the weekend, getting to the limit as early as you can, which really isn't difficult. Really is very difficult. It's not easy at all. And he looked quite comfortable there. Obviously, resisting the pressure from Sainz, it is quite difficult to pass. But I'm really surprised by that. I wouldn't have said he was a strong podium contender coming into the weekend, but he really did deliver.
Well, he absolutely trounced Gasly, didn't he? Gasly, I mean,
yeah, completely.
It was his best result for Alpine so far this year, but when your teammate's on the podium, you're a bit deflated. It comes after Miami, where Lauren Rossi, CEO, gave him a bit of a public telling off, basically saying it's not good enough right now. But that, instant almost change. Suddenly, they're right up there. But is it Monaco specific? Do you think we're going to get this? They're going to be right up there again in Spain, completely different track, more traditional?
I think it's probably going to, unfortunately, as much as I'd love to, again, get my crystal ball out and say that this is the new order, I think it's probably going to be back to being more traditional. Obviously, we didn't get to see the new upgrades coming in at Imola because the race was cancelled, and we're not really 100% sure yet what teams have got in terms of their European upgrade kits, because Monaco, it doesn't really show. We obviously saw Mercedes with the new side pods and Russell coming out and going, well, that didn't really feel much different. But until we get to a proper traditional racetrack, then, that's really where we're going to see what the teams have got, what they've brought now for this, if you want to call it, end of the first quarter of the season, and what they're going to show for the rest of it, what direction they're going to take the cars.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that develops. I'll tell you what car, though, is indestructible. Well, nearly indestructible. That Aston Martin, because Lance Stroll, terrible weekend for him, let's be honest, but playing dodgems with basically the field, the barriers, he was hitting the wall and some other cars on lap 1 so many times, but yet nothing could seem to damage that Aston Martin until finally, I think it was in the hairpin, wasn't it? And on the inters, crashed and then crashed again, and then again, and then that was it for Stroll, but disappointing for him.
It was. The last time I played, I don't really play racing games very much, and I saw this meme on Twitter actually, and it was like, Lance Stroll is all of us trying to negotiate Monaco on the F1 game, and I was like, that is
except there's no flashbacks.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, the last time I played with a controller, I was literally him, because it's like all or nothing, isn't it, on the lock, and it was like, bang, bang, bang. I mean, and the contrasting thing of Fernando Alonso was literally the only one really who could challenge Max Verstappen, sort of. And then you've got Lance. I mean, it all started at the hairpin on lap one at Fairmont,
Yeah.
trying to go around the outside, first barrier tap, Dodgems when the rain came, and he hit the wall hard. Like, you're right. I don't know what the mechanics and everyone back at Aston HQ are doing to that car, but it's strong. Like, that's a demolition derby car I've seen one, and it's also very quick. So other teams need to take some notes for some more robust structures, I think.
I mean, it is very quick and clearly made of bricks. But when you look at the disparity between Stroll and Alonso, I mean, we know Alonso is, one of the best drivers on the grid, but that's a bad, like, there's going to be, and this is a bigger question that I'm sure we'll explore throughout the rest of the season, but when your dad owns the team, but you are really not on the pace, there's going to have to be a question asked at some stage, right?
Well, let me ask you this. Obviously, we got the news that obviously they're switching to Honda engines as well.
Yeah.
What do you do then? Because you can't get rid of Fernando. Fernando's not going anywhere. We've already established he's going to be in his mid-70s driving Formula One. That's probably what he's going to be.
Goes up another decade with every time you talk about it.
By the next podcast is going to be 100.
Yeah.
He's just forgetting where he's going, which corner comes next. You have to be on the radio telling him. But it's one of those things, isn't it, really, where if Aston Martin are serious about fighting at the front, they need two really strong drivers. And, Lance comes with good pedigree in junior single seaters. He's won everything he's raced. At what point do you then go, well, hang on a minute, you've got Alonso really maximizing the car and developing and fighting at the front, but you're just not there. As you say, what point do you start asking the questions? And yeah, I think the nature of Formula One, it doesn't really matter if it's family. There's a lot of money going into it. Lawrence is a very successful businessman. He's not probably adverse to making ruthless decisions. And yeah, I think Lance is probably being treated like any other driver, and he definitely needs to up his game and catch Fernando. Otherwise, when Honda come in, there could be a small Yuki Tsunoda knocking on the door potentially. Let's start that rumor right now. Let's keep adding fuel to the fire, shall we?
I'm all for a Tsunoda alongside Alonso in a factory Aston Martin Honda. That would be mega. Shame for Yuki. He was looking good in the points, actually, for the race, but then brake issues and he plummeted right down towards the end. So a shame for Yuki not to get points, but once again, having the better of De Vries. Now, we were talking about Stroll playing Dodgems. Carlos Sainz was also out there getting quite feisty, not only on the radio, but he coming very close to the back of Ocon. In fact, there was contact, as you said, in the Nouvelle chicane, and that gave him some damage. It actually didn't seem to affect his pace too much with the front wing. But Sainz not happy with the Ferrari strategy. And when you look at where the Ferrari started the race and where they finished, Sainz only ahead of the two McLarens. That's not good. Him being boxed for the medium tyre to try and cover off Hamilton behind him. But he didn't care about Hamilton. He wanted to try and get the jump on Ocon. They were trying to play a little game of chicken to see who would come into the pits first. But Sainz was not happy. But he has said since that, I think I got a bit too fiery over the radio. But at the same time, what kind of call was that? Yet again from Ferrari.
Well, that's exactly what we were talking about earlier on about the driver. Like, there's nothing worse than following a car that you're quicker than. Because if Sainz had cleared Esteban, he would have checked away, gone away into the sunset. So you're sat and you're watching. There's nothing you can do because it's super tight. The car ahead's not making a mistake. You then get your glimpse of what is the opportunity to get that track positioning. They mess it up, whatever, they make the wrong call. Again, hindsight's very easy. And then they come on the radio and go, oh, well, we've got the gap 1.5 seconds to Hamilton behind. Of course, as a driver, you react, I don't care about P5. I care about P3. I want to be on the podium. I want to be maximizing what we've got. And so I completely understand why he got a bit fired up. But I do find it very interesting because we always continually talk about the Ferrari strategy masterclass. We can do this now. We're on the YouTube channel. It's all very good, isn't it? We can put some quotes in. And I just find it very interesting because you have huge teams of people that, they are Formula One effectively, aren't they? How do they keep getting it so wrong? And what's it going to take for them to start making those calls again to get rid of this terrible reputation? Of course, Ferrari make a lot of good strategy calls as well. It's only really the bad ones again highlighted because of us. It's very easy to sit here and say it, but it's interesting because it is those little decisions that hurt. Losing out on the points in Monaco, they come in handy over the course of a year. And if you get more points, you get more prize money, which obviously leads to, being able to develop a car more. And it's years of spiraling that lead to this point, isn't it? And if I was Sainz, I'd be very unhappy on losing the podium. And, obviously we're just happy because it means that I get to say the word Esti Besti again. And on I'm sorry, that's the last time I said it. I promise.
It's very icky, isn't it? It's very
It
icky
is.
when
I'm
you say
sorry.
it
I'm
out
sorry.
loud.
I'm sorry.
It's not.
I take it back. As I said it, I realized the error of my ways.
Well, I actually think we are quick to go on the Ferrari strategy. I actually think we could have got in harder, but I think it was outshone by the Alonso Aston Martin situation, not going onto the Inters really for Monaco. But that was Sainz and Ferrari. Leclerc pretty much just stayed where he started. At least he finished the race. Let's just be
It's
thankful
the
for that.
Leclerc curse continues in
It is
Monaco.
because his
Even
brother in
even
F2 as well.
Arthur, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a thing. I'm telling you. Like there is. If I was him, I'd change my name before the race. Just change it next year, just to see if it happens. And then if Arthur has another bad race in F2, because he's probably going to stay for another year, isn't he? Then we'll really know. We just need to find out because he's never going to win that race, is he?
I don't think it's allowed. Being a Monegasque racer, I don't think he can win the Monaco Grand Prix. It's not going to happen.
He's probably I don't know. Hopefully the people out there can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know any other Monegasque drivers coming through that. So is this the last chance?
You mean actually coming through? No, I know one. There was a Monegasque racer, Louis Chiron, who this is the commentator stat coming in. I wrote it down for my commentary this weekend, but I never got it out there, and I don't actually have it on me now, so I'm going to get it wrong. Of course I have, but Louis Chiron, because actually coming through to back, the first section then of the swimming pool chicane is actually called sort of Louis Chiron, I think, and it's named after him, a prolific Monegasque racer in the top echelon of racing between World War I and World War II, and he got onto the podium in Monaco, and that was his only podium in his career, I believe. Somebody's going to tell me because I haven't got it in front of me now. Somebody's going to tell me that's completely wrong, and I'm going to have to double check it after this. But I think that's.
I mean, it sounds great though, doesn't it? Like that. What a fact. No,
I had that ready. I had that ready for the red flag filler that I was going to have to do, but it didn't come. It didn't come. Even with the wet weather, we didn't get any kind of red flags or safety cars or nothing. It was bizarre. We didn't get it last time either in Monaco. It's crazy. Drivers doing a very good job of staying on the track, except for Kevin Magnussen, who, bless him, he was left out on the slick tyre and in the end just could not keep it out of the wall because it was so wet. But I mean, was that just a case of Haas going, yeah, I mean, you were fighting for 14th. There was nothing better really we could have done.
I think it was Gunter Steiner getting him back for smashing the door. That's what it was. All those years. Gunter never forgets. We all know that. No, it's complete strategy, isn't it? It's like, and imagine if it suddenly
dried up.
Imagine it had worked. Because actually, Monaco is one of those places where it does drive quite fast. Again, I think they resurfaced it sort of 3-4 years ago. I don't know if they resurface it every year, but certainly they did resurface. Yeah. And the newer tarmac surfaces, they drive very, very fast compared to your older tarmacs, especially like normal roads. So it might have been a gamble that worked. You have to take it because if it works out and a Haas wins in Monaco, that would be scenes. We're all here for that. Again, fortunately, it didn't happen. We're here discussing all the other bits. But I think an interesting point you made, it wasn't so much that the drivers were really good at keeping the cars on the track because there was cars sprayed left, right, and center. It was just the drivers were really good at finding reverse, which is actually quite hard to do in a race car, to be honest with you.
That's true. And also managed. It's also there was some decent spinning going out in the Sainte Devote runoff and before the hairpin, Beau Rivage, is it? Yeah,
Beau Rivage, yeah.
In the runoff there, because it's tight, especially in these Formula One cars these days to get a good spin on you.
That photo of Russell rejoining and Perez collecting him as the Aston Martin flies down the escape road.
Imagine if that was Verstappen, and after all the ding-dongs they've had this year anyway, imagine if he clouted Max. That would have been. Well, I mean, we would have started the show with that for a start, but
that was. Sometimes you just create these iconic images, don't you? That will just stay forever, and you know that's going to be a meme that lives on, which I'm more than happy for. But yeah. I think the drivers now know the Monaco escape roads better than they did certainly in previous years, don't they?
Well, look, it was a good race for all intents and purposes, I think, for Monaco. Max Verstappen, in the end, winning out, extends his championship lead. And really, though, Verstappen had a great race, but, he found the wall and stuff then through to back. He was still playing a little bit of bumper cars, kept it on the straight and narrow. But to get pole position ahead of Alonso, who was fastest in the first two sectors. It was all coming through the swimming pool chicane for Max Verstappen. That final sector was just magic.
That was just perfection. Like, you can't. I can't explain to you how perfect that is and how hard that is to do. Every barrier, every apex is the barrier. Every barrier he hit, and he even hit the barrier on the start finish with a grid start. He carried so much speed through the last corner, Anthony knows, that he actually managed to lean on the barrier on the right hand side where the pit boards are hung out. That is exceptional. There was nothing left on the table there. And it's so rare to say that. You always look at a lap as a driver or as an engineer or whatever. There's always something, because it's so hard to be perfect. That was perfect. That was just absolute perfection. And what a joy to watch. And, thankfully the race direction with the coverage was so good this year. We actually got to see it rather than a cutaway of Lance Stroll.
Yes, thank you, F1 TV, for taking it over from Monaco. Well bloody done. It just highlights, though, doesn't it, that Verstappen is special. He is. And he doesn't make mistakes, if many. And if he does, he gets away with it. Unlike Sergio Perez. And as much as I think he is a brilliant racing driver, clearly is, he's not at the level of Verstappen. There are different ends of their career for a start. But Sergio Perez crashing in turn one in qualifying, you can't do that around Monaco, not when you're literally one of two fighting for this championship. Let's be honest, if fighting is even allowed come the halfway point. To start 20th and last in Monaco, I mean, they tried something with the strategy. It wasn't really ever going to pay off unless there was a massive shunt, which, it's Monaco, could have happened. But Perez, man, it's not good enough.
Yeah, it was just a very clumsy race as well, wasn't it? I mean, accidents happen, it's fine. But he really needed to make good progress, and he just made too many errors over the course of the race. There was, running into the back of people after the tunnel, the punk, or the contact on the first lap, which led him to pit. It's just, that wasn't the race he needed, especially after where Max is again. We again, hold my hands up. We sat here and we were like, this is the start of the championship fight. Max is well and truly, dug it in to say, no, it's not. And then for Max to be delivering the performances he's delivering while Sergio's delivering the clumsy races that just happened there, it doesn't send the best message for a championship. As much as I'd love to talk differently, it's going to be a big struggle to catch back up and then elevate yourself to a higher level than that, because Max is there. Max is up, and as you said, what a special performance. And I don't think it's going to be the last one we see this weekend, or this year, sorry.
No, not at all. The thing is, though, when Perez wins, we talk about how amazing it was. It was a really good win. He kept Verstappen at bay, but Verstappen's only a couple of seconds behind him. Whereas when Verstappen wins, it's by a mile and it's dominating. Do you think, I know we are still early on in this season, the longest ever, before the cancellations, but do you think it is championship over? Do you think, and I don't mean that in terms of mathematically, obviously, but 39 points the gap now at the top. But Red Bull could well use this as a perfect way of going, well, look, you're basically plus 40 points behind. You're now supporting role of Verstappen.
I think it is too early to say it's over. It's never over because, plagues of mechanicals, whatever it is that can happen, mistakes. Max also isn't perfect. He's at a very high level, but he's not perfect. He's a human being. So
I don't think he is. I do not think he is.
One of the things that I find really interesting from a driving perspective is obviously we saw that amazing last sector. If we rewind back, the keen-eyed, or the people that remember it, that Saudi qualifying where Max was on the absolute laps of laps and then plowed it into the barrier. I find it really interesting how Max's developmental process, for him to find these next levels, he's almost free of the fear of making mistakes, and that's something that can hold a lot of drivers, athletes, whatever it is back. He's really just well, if I crash trying to do the perfect lap, it doesn't matter. Whereas I think no one else really lays it on the line, and he does make those mistakes. He learns from those mistakes, and then he elevates himself to be able to go and deliver like he did in Monaco. And again, maybe putting two and two together here, but the lap in Saudi, I think, is part of the reason why he was able to do the lap that he did in Monaco, because he found that extra little bit, didn't quite execute it, but he now knows that it's there. And I think we're going to have to see more of that from Sergio, not necessarily clumsy moments, but moments of brilliance where he lays everything on the line to see really how much is left in the bag with what he's got for his driving style and the way that he's gelling with the car, and hope, and that's his best chance. If he doesn't take that next step, then there's no chance that it's even going to be a fight. Red Bull won't probably have to get involved, because potentially for every max DNF, if he keeps scoring the big margins on him in terms of points, the gap just continues to extend. And yeah, mathematically over the course of a long season. But if we get sort of halfway through and the gap's well over 100 points, then it's going to be very, very, very difficult for Sergio to pull it back.
Yeah, well, we'll wait and see. We go to Spain next week, don't we? But of course, that was the scene of Verstappen's debut at a Red Bull and first ever win. And he's pretty good around there, is old Max Verstappen. Well, we'll keep an eye on how Sergio Perez gets going. Some of the other things coming into the weekend as well were upgrades because of the cancellation of Imola, and rightfully so. You know, all our thoughts very much with those in the Emilia-Romagna region and northern Italy. But upgrades were supposed to be introduced there, particularly on Mercedes' side with this huge upgrade that Toto Wolff was talking about and then trying to play down. They ploughed through, brought them into Monaco, new side pods, new bits and bobs. And yeah, you know, double points finish, but they weren't up there fighting with Alpine. They weren't up there fighting with, or at least Ocon. They weren't up there fighting with Alonso and Verstappen, that's for sure, where Hamilton and Russell certainly expect to be. A, what was the point of bringing them to Monaco? And B, it sounds like it hasn't really made the step. Or is it too early to really say in Spain we'll see what they've really got?
Well, they brought it there because they spent all this money doing it. I mean, doesn't it
Monaco,
make sense?
if you're going to crash anyway, you're going to crash into Monaco. What happens then? You know, you just ripped a side pod off that you've just spent ages developing.
Everybody knows people in Formula One don't work hard enough. There's not enough races.
Yes, absolutely.
There's too much downtime. So if they crash the cars in Monaco, it just gives them more stuff to do in between the races.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Yeah. So no, I think that's a very good point, actually, to bring potentially new upgrades. But I think it kind of, again, it shows how hard everyone's trying to push to catch up. It's the risk versus reward. And obviously the reward of it working and having a great race weekend in Monaco far outweighs the other risk of crashing, and, you know, all the hard work of all the guys back at the factory and girls at the factory are, you know, nullified effectively. So it does make some sense, but also at the same time, I think we have to wait and see. When we get to Barcelona, there's a combination, low, medium, high speed, corners. It's a more traditional race. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we're going to see teams elevate with the upgrades that they've brought. Otherwise, it's a lot of time and money spent to go back to the drawing board.
It is. At least the one thing that every other team could come away with was when the Red Bull cinched up high by the crane. You get a lovely picture on your phone. Save that image. And then all you do, copy that. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Designers, away you go. Those cranes, though, gives me vertigo when they launch them up that high around Monaco. An F1 car should not be that high anywhere.
Well, it happened a few years ago at Macau, didn't it? Obviously, the famous F3 race that used to happen. Hopefully, will happen again. So, what a race! If anyone has some time, go back and just you know, YouTube that. That absolutely awesome watching F3 cars hack around the streets of Macau. It's carnage. And whenever they crash, obviously the cranes bring them up because there's not much space around. And there was a car that got lifted up on a crane and it got damaged. It got sent into a building. Then they put it on the flatbed and it fell off the flatbed.
Oh God! Think of all the money.
Yeah, and that's a front wing in one of those old F3 cars. The Dallara F3 was probably like, I think it's somewhere in the region of about €5,000. So yeah. I don't know what that is in conversion for other currencies. I'm not very good at maths, but it's enough money to hurt your pocket, isn't it? Really? So
yeah, it's something that a driver will not want to fork out for on an extra basis, is it? And actually, because there was F3 around Monaco for the first time, FIA Formula 3, modern Formula 3 around there for the first time. Obviously not the first time that third-tier racing has been around Monaco. There wasn't that much overtaking even in F3, and that got me worried for the race. And I thought, oh, God, if there's not much overtaking in F3, God help us for F1. But even though there wasn't overtaking, there was still drama. So all in all, Monaco, you earned your place on the calendar, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, all the chat that we had about, we should replace Monaco, and it's terrible. Monaco's amazing.
It is special.
Can we appreciate those aerial shots of watching Formula One cars, and they're fast now. They really are. Watching them negotiate the streets of Monaco with the sea in the background, all the lovely. It's just amazing. We let's end the discussion, please. By all means, continue it, but only if you think that it should stay on the calendar until Fernando Alonso retires in 100 years.
In 125 years, yeah. It is special, and qualifying obviously is always pretty sensational around Monaco. Okay, it is time for our WTF1 podium. Now, it's just going to be me and you, Callan, this week. Normally, we'll have somebody extra, but Sasha, as we know, is out partying or recovering from his party with Lando Norris, which is fair enough. We will wish we would be
his
there.
star performer is definitely himself. For the party last night with Lando Norris.
Come on then. Right, so Callan, up first. Let's have your star performer.
There's a couple here. I have to say Verstappen.
Mm-hmm.
He was just so good all weekend. From qualifying in the race, he was in command. Didn't even really know he was there, did we? So, yeah, untouchable in the streets, and what a deserving victory. What about yourself?
I'm going to go for Esteban Ocon in the Alpine. Esty.
When someone else says it, I can see how bad it is.
God, that nearly killed me.
How dare you?
But you know what? I think that that result in the qualifying lap time for a starter was sensational. Put that in, trounced his teammate Gasly by some margin this weekend. Held on to it, held on to the pressure, made the right calls, didn't make any stupid mistakes. He was my star performer. I always think it's too easy to give it to the winner. I think so. I'm going to go for Ocon as my star.
Not when they dominate the way that they did. Surely,
yeah, well,
he was so good. He was just on it. Anyway,
well, go on then. Who
you're allowed an opinion. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you so much, Callan. Right, on the flip end then, worst performer.
I'm so relieved to say this. It's not Nick de Vries.
Not Nick de Vries.
It's not Nick de Vries.
He actually did all right. I mean, he did decent qualifying, decent race. You know, didn't sling it in the wall.
This is the start of the Nick de Vries resurgence, and I can't wait. I'm attaching myself to this now.
So he escaped the bottom rung of the podium. Now.
I would say honourable mention for Lance Stroll, but unfortunately
very
it's
true.
Sergio Perez, because when your teammate does what he does in that car, and you are where you are, unfortunately, it's got to be Sergio. And yeah, let's see how he bounces back in Spain.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Perez is my worst performer of the weekend. Biggest surprise performer of the Grand Prix.
For me, it was Ocon. See that's why he didn't get my star performer, because again, if someone would have said to me Ocon before the start of the race, I just didn't think it was there. The package wasn't quite there. And yeah, to see him finish on the podium and do it the way that he did and have the great qualifying and everything, that for me was a big surprise and was definitely worthy of my star performer, but more of a surprise to me.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Mine's I don't know if it's left field or not. And it wasn't until this morning where I just sort
of... Is it Paul di Resta?
It's not Paul di Resta. Long may that man continue his racing career. I am a Paul di Resta fan. I'm just going to say it. All right, I'm going to get that out of the way now. We're going to rip that band-aid off.
I just wanted to drop it in before the end of the pod. I've been waiting the entire time. I was like, this is the last chance.
Let's rip that band-aid off now, okay? Yeah. I think he's a great driver and deserves to be in Formula 1 longer. But I didn't want to get that in at the start of the podcast because this is the first time we're on YouTube. So I didn't want to piss everybody off right at the start. But my biggest surprise performer of the Grand Prix is actually the two McLarens. Now, they both got points, decent qualifying, but it wasn't until and actually star performers go actually to the Lando Norris's mechanics for getting that car fixed and out in time for Q3. But I just thought, actually, when I sat back and thought about it this morning, Alpine did much better in terms of that's who they're locked in a battle with in the constructors. But you know what, for Piastri to be right there with Norris and overtaking at a premium around Monaco to come home with a double points finish in a McLaren that is struggling this year, I actually thought was a really good performance. And I was surprised actually because they went a little bit under the radar for me.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, that's a very good point. It kind of gets overlooked a little bit, doesn't it? That's a
very good point.
It's always, well, that's made me reconsider mine. But I'm still gonna keep. I'm not gonna say it.
No.
I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna say it.
Don't you dare. Well, look, we don't have long to wait then until we're back again next week for the Spanish Grand Prix, and then it's a little bit of a break, and then I think we go to Canada, don't we? So a slightly more traditional track. What are you expecting from Spain, Callan?
What do I want or what am I expecting?
Let's do what do you want and then what do you expect?
I'd love carnage. I'd love rain halfway through the race, like a proper Spanish thunderstorm. Yeah. I'd love to see a Haas win.
All right, we're just being ridiculous now.
Preferably Hülkenberg. Redemption on the strategy call. The first podium in Formula 1 for Nico Hülkenberg.
And it's a win. Yeah, that would
be it's a win. I think what we'll probably see is Perez obviously closer to Verstappen again. Probably Verstappen driving away. Hopefully someone can challenge him. You never know. Again, Barcelona, a very difficult place to pass. So if you can get yourself ahead of a car that's a similar speed to you, then you can hold him off. Maybe the Matador shows something, continues his recent development as a rookie in Formula One all the way through to his late ages and puts the Aston Martin at the front. But yeah, I really hope that we see the upgrades working and just something different. I'd love to see some teams bring something that works, that really elevates them and brings them closer to the front of the field.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think as much as I'd love to see Hasses on the podium in a make-believe world, that'd be bloody brilliant. But I think, if Mercedes can get these upgrades right, and elevate them suddenly in the fight for the podium with Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin, I'd love to see Alpine continue this form, because then suddenly, okay, you've got Red Bull up there, but if you then, got that gap, which then now contains Aston Martin, Alpine, Mercedes, Ferrari, then we're cooking. Then we've got a good little battle going. So if they can get their acts together, basically, I'd love to see that and start to develop, because we are still very early on in this season. It's so easy to feel like we've been doing this for ages now, but actually we're not even halfway yet. So
let's lay it on the line. What's your top 3 prediction?
Top 3 prediction. Okay. All right. My realistic top 3 prediction is Verstappen, Perez, and Alonso. Sorry, okay. Boring.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to say Verstappen, Alonso, Leclerc.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. We'll go with it. Let's see.
I'd like to see Alonso on the podium. Alonso on the podium in his home race would be nice. Maybe a Sainz on the podium too for his home race. A double Spanish podium would be nice, I think.
That would be good.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what happens.
Well, let's see. Let us know your top 3. And if you like this podcast, well, we'd love to hear from you. If you didn't, don't say anything.
Well, whatever you say, just mean it. Just say something. Yeah. Why not?
Leave us a review. You know how well they do on the algorithms and all this kind of stuff. Like, subscribe, and all that jazz. Stay tuned across WTF1, the website for all the latest news and things like that. And, of course, Hot Takes Wednesday, out on Wednesday, shock. And we will be back same time next week, probably, to look back at Spain. And it will be me, Callan, and maybe a guest, unless Lando Norris persuades him to go to a party and they have to bail on us. So we will get Sasha Fenestraz on the show at one stage. Who would you like us to get on the show? We would love to know. Give us your suggestions. Make them realistic. We can't just ring up Lando and get him on. But yeah,
we can ask Sasha to call Lando, though, can't we? Just as long as it's not on a Monday.
That's true. As long as it's not on a Monday, we'll get him on for a midweeker. Look, Callan O'Keeffe, thank you very much as always. I've been Harry Benjamin, and we shall see you right back here next week to look back at all things Spain on the New Look WTF1 Post Race Podcast. Bye bye.